Okay, this is the critical lap. This is the critical lap. Confirm.
Leave me alone. I know what to do.
Welcome back to the Critical Lap. Daniel, how are you?
Welcome back. I'm great. I'm so good.
It's Sunday.
It's Sunday. It's race day.
Oh,
It's
the
glorious.
countdown says 0. It is the race day.
So nice. So nice to see that goose egg behind you, man.
It's so great. Actually, I was thinking the countdown is now at 0 or 7, depending on how you count, because
True.
we're in it now.
True.
We're getting started. That race was incredible. We're just coming off the Australian Grand Prix. That's
Australian.
my best attempt. I think I just went Cockney, so I got to be careful there.
If you say "rise up lights" in an American accent,
lights. Yeah.
Say it again, fast.
Rise up lights.
Are you saying razor blades in Australian? Or are you saying rise up lights? Rise up
Oh,
lights.
see, that's a mind bender right
That's
there.
a bender. If you ever want to just, to our audience who's not here for this, but
Yeah.
if you ever want to just fake an Australian accent, give them
Rise
the
up
old
lights.
rise of lights.
That reminds me of the purple burglar alarm that Scottish people cannot say. Have you seen that?
No, I haven't seen that.
Purple burglar alarm. Apparently, it's quite difficult for Scottish people.
I mean, the purple burglar sounds hard to say by itself, even though
Just for anybody.
Just for anybody.
Right. Even Eminem. Yeah. I don't know how we took that turn. That race was incredible. We're coming off the Australian Grand Prix, first race of the season. That lived up to the hype for sure.
Man.
Spoiler alerts if you haven't watched the race, because we're getting into it today.
Yeah, get out of this podcast episode if you don't want spoilers, because we're going to be reveling in all the awesomeness of what happened this weekend.
Yeah, for sure. Hit pause on the podcast. Go watch it if you have the Australian Grand Prix, the season opener for the 2025 Formula One season. It absolutely lived up to the hype. The hype was high, and I honestly can't think of a better first race. I know it wasn't great for everyone in terms of the drivers, but man, that was a fun race to watch. I was on the edge of my seat the entire time.
So much fun. So much fun. If only there was a way to guarantee rain every single season opener, or even just like at random. I mean, I don't want to see I think it would get tired of wet races if they were just all wet, but man, one of the better wet races, if you ask me, to be honest, at least in recent memory.
Well, and I was thinking when I started watching Formula One for the first time, people would say that all the time. Although, rain is the great equalizer, and it always gets fun, and you never know. Yeah. And it kind of annoyed me as a new fan, to be honest, because they're all slipping, sliding around. I kind of want to see the fast, I want to see the cars go zoom and go really fast. And I didn't like it to begin with. And then now you're right. You never know what's going to happen. You see people at the front you didn't expect to be there.
And after you've seen race after race after race, and you know the cars well, like you and I do, Ruben, like we kind of know what everybody's capable of, and we could probably put a blindfold on and predict the end of the race within some degree of accuracy. So having that water on there, having on the track, having that, I mean, the strategy just changes so much. It's just everything just goes out the window, and it's anyone's race. It really is anyone's race.
Yeah, that's the stat as well, right? Where you start is probably where you finish, right? Plus or minus. So that's why getting pole position in qualifying is so important, because odds are if you get first place in qualifying, you're probably going to finish first place. That's just not true in a wet race. You have no idea, especially if the rain comes and goes throughout the race. So yeah, this was a great first start. So welcome back to the Critical Lap. For those of you who are new, thank you for joining us. For those who are returning, welcome back. The Critical Lap, this is your one-stop shop for all things Formula One, especially for some of those newcomer fans that are really trying to figure it out. I am Ruben, one of your hosts. I am a relatively new fan to the Formula One family. I was brought in with Drive to Survive, but found the real races to be even better. So I'm having a great time, and glad you joined us today.
Welcome back, everybody. Welcome all new fans to the podcast, and new fans to Formula One. This is who this is for. We've said in previous episodes, Ruben and I are doing this for each other, for ourselves. But no, we're happy to have you here. We hope you get a little bit of value out of it. I'm Daniel. I'm the expert on this podcast. Outside of this podcast, probably not. But today, I'm the veteran in the room. I'm the guy with all the answers.
It's all relative. I actually met a guy the other day on Wednesday, and he said, "Oh, I heard you're doing a podcast. I love Formula One. I just started getting into Formula One." I was like, "Really?" He said, "Yeah, I decided yesterday to be a Formula One fan." I was like, "Wait, like actually yesterday?" He's like, "No, for sure. Yesterday I got to be a fan." He already had Mercedes wallpaper on his phone. So for you anti-Mercedes people, I'm sure you love hearing that. he claimed, and I honestly have to agree with him a little bit. Mercedes does have some of the best merchandise, but
They've got great merch. They look good in the paddock. Their cars this year too. There's something about the nose that makes me think that their nose is like rounded and kind of crowned at the top, and then it has like this shaved down. And it's not. It's just like any other nose on any other
Right.
car. I mean, they're all different to some degree, but the
Right.
paint makes it look. It gives it this interesting little angular vibe
Yeah.
or visual effect. And I noticed that just recently. I think it was probably like FP2 or maybe FP1 that I was like, ooh, that kind of looks cool. And I had to look at it several times to see like, nope, it's just a
some of
the
those
paint job.
liveries are growing on me. That one, that two-tone, I'm not sure if it's my favorite, but it does give it almost like a smoky look. Like the engine's gotten hot, like a really heavily used engine or
interesting.
exhaust that gets kind of blackened around it.
Yeah.
But anyway, that's not what you came here to hear about. We are reviewing the results of the Australian Grand Prix, kind of going over our highlights here. So just a quick review. If you haven't seen the Grand Prix, again, pause and go watch. But if you have, rounding out the number one spot, Lando Norris with his first win of the season. I can't believe it's only his fifth win overall.
You know, I heard that and I was like, that can't be true. On previous episodes, maybe even the last episode, Ruben, I was kind of saying like, what crazy seasons there were back in the day when the world champion only won X number of races, single digit numbers of races.
Right.
And they said that, and I thought about my comment, and I was like, well, I guess it would have been possible last year, but that might have been a 6 or 7 win. Because, I mean, all of his wins happened last season. So,
well, and I might be wrong. I think it's Bortoleto that won Formula 2 last year. Is it Bortoleto? Bortoleto won last season, I think, Formula 2. And y'all hold me honest to this. I think he only won 2 races. So again, it's like that's consistency. That consistency is what helps you win at other levels. I think we're just used to watching Max Verstappen win 23 races.
Just dominate. Same thing with Lewis before him. Yeah.
Right. Speaking of Max Verstappen, number 2, a close second. He came in at less than a second behind Lando Norris.
Another spoiler alert. Great race finish to watch. Great last few laps. Honestly, really great.
Well, it felt like he was chasing Lando Norris the entire race. I know it wasn't like at one point there was a big 16-second gap and he got lucky with a safety car, but I think it doesn't. This race is definitely one of those. If you take a 5-minute snippet, it does not tell you the whole story.
Not
it doesn't
at all.
matter which 5 minutes you take. Lando Norris in first, Max Verstappen and George Russell joined them on the podium for somewhat of a surprise third place, I think, with a full 8.5 seconds behind Verstappen. So he was not so close third place. Surprisingly, Kimi Antonelli, they bumped him to 5th with a 5-second penalty. Then they took off the 5-second penalty and he retained his 4th place finish. And Alex Albon taking up the 5th place in the Williams, which has got to be an incredible result. Those are your top 5. Lando Norris, Max Verstappen, George Russell on the podium, and Antonelli and Albon 4th and
Williams 5th. In 5th on merit. Can you believe it? And I say on merit because nobody really that should be in the top 10 DNF'd, I don't think.
Right.
If I remember correctly. Williams in 5th on merit.
Yeah.
That's going to be, I hope that trend stays alive for 2025.
I was going to say all the DNFs. So our DNFs, we had a lot of crashes. Not a great day for rookies. I'm trying to remember who we lost first. I think it was Hadjar first.
Hadjar caused the aborted start on the formation lap. Yep.
Okay, which was really disappointing to see because he was having a great weekend up until then.
Right.
Isaac Hadjar in the Racing Bulls. I'm going to get that name right now.
Barb.
Racing Bulls, so much better than V-Carb.
Wait, what, Racing Balls or Racing Bulls?
Racing Bulls. Well, it depends. Throwback to the.
I think at this point I'm going to call him Barb from now on.
The Racing
just
Balls. I kind of like the Racing.
I sent Ruben a text message over the weekend, and my phone autocorrected from V-Carb to Barb, so it's Barb for me.
I don't think we fixed that. I also, when you said Racing Balls, after that's a throwback to the YouTube closed captioning, getting the spelling wrong. I don't know if you've ever seen the marble racing that they do, where they dig big channels and they race. You pick a marble color and then they just drop them and they run downhill. That's a huge.
Yet one more series I have to watch now.
All the things you never planned to watch. Jack Doohan, I think, was the second DNF. Spun out really early on. Carlos Sainz, we lost him, I think, when they were behind the safety car. I think
it was right around the same time Doohan lost it. I don't know if it was a yellow flag. I don't think they were really going all out. And he claims, just for y'all listening that haven't seen it or haven't watched the race, he claims there was I think let me get the comment pulled up. Torque surge. And if you watched it, which I did over and over, I do want to blame the car more than I want to blame Carlos for that wipeout.
Yeah, I also wanted to do that because I had such high hopes for Carlos Sainz this week. We'll
Yeah.
kind of get into that, but he had a great week lined up, weekend going up until that moment. And I think given the way Albon finished in fifth, you have to ask what would have been if Sainz had finished that race.
So much potential.
We also lost Lawson and Bortoleto, and I think honestly the only thing that probably makes them feel better is that Fernando Alonso also did DNF. So between Carlos Sainz and Fernando Alonso, that's got to give at least the 4. I think we call Liam Lawson a rookie at this point, but it kind of gives the 4 rookies or the 3.5 rookies that crashed out some hope that also the most experienced driver lost control.
Right.
A lot of spinning out,
Right.
a lot of rain,
when
a
I
lot of low
saw-
speed crashes.
When I saw Alonso spinning out, I was like, who hit Alonso? Who hit him? Where is he?
Right. Which one of you idiots
Which
crashed
one?
into the most
But
experienced?
no, he did it to himself. So
Well, there were a lot of there was a lot of rain off and on, kind of came and went. It was a wet track when they started, dried up really quickly, and then that rain showed up halfway through and just threw everything into turmoil. But I thought what was crazy was Hadjar and Sainz right at the beginning losing control in what just seemed like the horsepower and torque of the car. In Hadjar's case, just catching him out on a wet track. But I was watching with my kids and they literally piped up like, "What happened? Why did he crash?" I don't know what to tell you. 1,000 horsepower spinning the wheels on a wet track.
Yeah.
It's tough to keep track.
right.
No pun intended. So yeah, great finish. What was your kind of highlights? Like I said, I kind of went up and down on this one. This one felt like an emotional roller coaster for me.
So highlight for me, I think, was the fact that the most competitive car from last year is still competitive, and the world champion from last year is still competitive. So we're going to have, if this race is an indicator for the season, we're going to have another tough battle at the top. If a Red Bull car wasn't competitive, or maybe it varies track by track and McLaren can kind of stay more consistent over the season, maybe not, but if a Red Bull can stay competitive across all the different track types, we will have an amazing battle at the top. And throw in there, hopefully, a Ferrari that's getting better. Throw in there, hopefully, a Mercedes that remains competitive. I mean, you had Russell on the podium. To me, that's really interesting. Okay, we saw practice and we watched, we saw preseason testing, and then we saw practice. And for me, I'd kind of discounted Red Bull, like, it's gonna be tough for them. Max legitimately had a chance to win it this in this race
For sure.
So it's another good shot for Max.
It's another close run,
and it's going to keep McLaren. They're going to have to stay sharp, and that's what I liked about it the whole time. I think we'll have a better idea of what to expect the rest of the season if we see a dry race. Hopefully, who knows what happens in China, but hopefully it's a fun race to watch, wet or dry. But I think a dry race would say this is your trajectory for the season. But today I saw, a competitive Red Bull.
Yeah. Well, I saw a competitive Red Bull. My first thought was right at the beginning, because the track was wet and Verstappen was so competitive right off the bat, was Verstappen is just in a league on his own right now in the wet.
Oh yeah.
You can discount it all you want, but the reality is we have 11 teams this year, without Cadillac. We've got all the teams, Red Bull, and then Verstappen is his own little 11th team. He's outperforming anyone else in the Red Bull by such a margin that honestly, you have to look for that little Red Bull symbol to try to remember who else is supposed to be up there with him.
That's a really good point. I think last year Perez did support him, right? Perez even won a race early in the year. And so he did kind of have that backstop. But for the most of the second half of the season, he did not.
Right.
And you wonder what it would be like if would they be more dominant? Would they have dominated last year a little bit more if they had a backstop? And like you're saying, really it's two separate teams, same car, but when you have a non-Max Verstappen driver in the other one, there's you can't really expect the same.
Well, and again, I don't want to read into it too much. It's one race. I say it's one race. Max Verstappen, I think I saw today, by not winning today on the first race of the season, he's technically not at the top of the driver leaderboard for points for the first time in 63 races. like that is such a long run of dominance, as whether you're winning or losing or not winning that race or not, being at the top of the points leaderboard for 63 races.
Yeah.
That consistency is mind blowing. And so again, I don't want to read into it too much. It did seem like when the track started drying out a little bit, he could not keep up with that McLaren, and others were starting to kind of close the gap from behind. So, but you still have to just say, man, you have to wonder how good that Red Bull really is, or how good Verstappen just really is.
Yeah.
So it was a great performance by him. Great to see. I was surprised that during a lot of the qualifying, and not qualifying, but a lot of the practice sessions, all the rookies struggled a little bit. And it was interesting to see that the rookies that struggled the most seemed to do pretty well in the races. Like Kimi Antonelli in that Mercedes had a
Exactly.
pretty strong race.
Exactly. I was thinking, especially in qualies, I was like, man, what happened to Antonelli? He's supposed to be this prodigy, etc. And look at it. He survived everything that was thrown at him for the whole race.
Right.
And I mean, a lot of people didn't, right? A lot of people
Yeah.
like, whether it was their own driving that caught him out, or team strategy that caught him out, which we can talk about a little bit. He made through it. You know, he made his way through it, and he
Right.
might have been on a podium. You just
Yeah,
like he
yeah.
was that close.
I mean, he was that close. And if you think about, you mentioned the Ferraris being close. We mentioned the ones that spun out and didn't finish. Uh, Charles Leclerc, whatever you want to call him, Leclerc, and Piastri had really bad spin outs. Piastri's was like a devastating spin out.
Yeah, that
and
really
they
did
still
alter the
finished
course.
in the top 10.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And
So
good
if you
on
think-
Piastri, right? Good on him for sticking with it. I don't, we dog on Lance Stroll a lot here, but like if Lance had made it into the grass, he would have been out of the car, 5 seconds into that. And meanwhile,
Right.
Piastri's like, put it in reverse, put it in drive, put it in reverse. Let's get out of here. And he rescued what could have just been a DNF. So
Well, rescued what would have been a DNF. And the bigger factor was, and again, if you weren't watching that closely, Piastri just lost control a little bit. He was in second place at the time, lost control, lost the spot to Verstappen, spun out in the grass, looked completely beached. He was not moving. It looked like he was sliding on ice, just slid
Mhm.
across that grass.
Mhm.
If he had not rejoined, remember, Norris had already pitted for intermediates at that point. Verstappen had not. If he had not rejoined, Verstappen would have gotten a safety car pit stop, a free pit stop, instead of having to stay competitive on those slicks.
That's a good
So by
point.
rejoining, the race kept going. So I mean, I got to call out Piastri for that. That seemed like his entire race going down the drain.
Yeah, by
And-
rejoining, the race kept going, and he eliminated Max's chance at a safety car pit stop. Max did mention that in his post-race interview. I don't know if you caught that, but he was like, "Yeah, I would have come back in second regardless of if I had pitted under safety car or pitted regularly." But that was definitely some team.
Right.
Number one, it's his home race, right? He's Australian.
Right.
You saw tons of people holding up, big heads of him, and in the stands, tons of 81 jerseys or whatever. Then you've got his parents there, just kind of like
Yep.
cheering him on and worried
Yeah.
about him. It's his home race. I would have been fine with Papaya Rules going his way. If any
Right,
difference
right.
there, Papaya Rules going his way because it's his home race, I would have been like, fine. But even when he was in second and trying to compete for that win at home and lost it, he didn't just throw it in. And I really do
Right.
respect that.
Yeah, I mean, it took a lot of the air out of the stadium between him and Doohan crashing out, both Australians.
Yeah.
I think that's tough for the crowd there. They keep quoting that stat. No Australian driver has ever won the Australian Grand Prix, and that Piastri is your best chance for a while.
Oh, absolutely.
This year,
Yeah.
probably
Yeah.
this year, honestly, was the closest. We have no idea what next year will be like. That just I do want to round out the top 10 here in terms of point scores. We had in number 6, a surprise number 6, Lance Stroll in the Aston Martin. Number 7 was Nico Hulkenberg, as Danny Ricciardo would say.
Mhm.
Charles Leclerc in 8th, Oscar Piastri in 9th, and Lewis Hamilton in the second Ferrari in 10th, scoring 1 point. And again, I don't know how new you are to Formula One, but points are only awarded at the top 10. So Pierre Gasly missed out by just a little bit. But yeah, it was a close race. And that was some of my highlights. I mean, when you talk about the surprise winners in my mind, yes, I agree with you. McLaren was strong. I think except for that one moment for Piastri, it would have been a 1-2 finish for McLaren. If anything, we'd be talking about that ongoing battle between the two McLaren drivers. even with spinning out in what I thought was a complete race ender, right? He was in a field and couldn't move for a good 30 seconds. It was a while. He still finished
Yeah,
ninth.
I was blown away at his recovery because I mean, granted, he didn't go down to 20th of 20. He went down
Right.
to what 14 of 14.
Right.
So he didn't have as much of the field to work his way back through.
Right.
He had a safety car to his advantage that helped him kind of catch up to the back of the pack, and because there was a safety
Right.
car after. Isn't that right? Am I remembering that right? There was a safety car after his.
Yep.
I forget what the cause was, but that safety car, it was so close to the end of the race. That safety car was like, oh, they're going to end the race under safety car. Luckily,
Right.
we had four or five laps that we got to watch with that battle to the end between Max and Lando. But
Right.
yeah, you're right. It's valiant effort to get back to the points and then some. So
Right.
that
So
also
that's a highlight that the McLaren is that strong. Your drivers are that strong that you're scrapping a ninth place finish even with only 14 cars after crashing out. But aside from that, the surprise winners to me were Mercedes. And you can call it a game of attrition, right? You lost a McLaren. I don't know where the other Red Bull was. I never saw it. It was behind me. And, nobody's really clear where the Ferraris are. They were trying to figure out their radio messages. Whatever you want to call it, George Russell and Antonelli, third and fourth, that's a huge win. And right now they're going to be leading the Constructors' Championship.
that's a good point.
The rest catch up. So
That's a good
huge
point.
win for them.
Toto sleeping with a smile on his face tonight.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. A huge win for them. You already called out Williams, but Williams and Sauber, both of Williams and Sauber, that's a huge surprise for me. Hülkenberg scored 6 points, which is 2 more points than they scored than Sauber scored in 2024 total. They scored 4 points total, and he scored 6 today.
Never ceases to surprise that man, Nico Hülkenberg.
One day he's going to win a race. He's going to be on a podium one day, and I'm going to get to see it. Hülkenberg, I think the longest running driver who's never actually stood on a podium.
Yeah.
Is that right?
And, if he sticks around, if he can somehow be the preferred driver at Audi, and somehow Audi has some sort of blowout, standout, whatever you want to call it, show out first season with new regulations as an actual works constructor, that would be fantastic for him. Just the most long suffered, most on merit. Just if he could have a good year, world champion or not, I don't care. I just wanted to see him
just
perform.
a consistent year. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, it's nothing new, I guess, for Hülkenberg. Hülkenberg scored something like 40 some odd points last year with Haas Ferrari, but Haas was having a good run last year.
Oh yeah.
But anyway, 6 points is huge for Sauber. That sounds funny, but at the same point, they were so far behind everyone last year. If they do 2 or 3 more races like this, they have a chance to be 9th or 8th, as opposed to dead last in a tight field. Albon scored 10 points. That's more than half of what Williams got all of last year. And you have to assume that if Sainz had held on, he would have at least been competing at the end of those points, and we would have been looking at.
Oh, listen,
12,
with all the
15
safety
points.
cars and everything that happened, Sainz could have been right behind Albon, right behind him. There's just who knows what kind of crazy mix-up would have happened if he had, stayed on track.
For sure. So I think those are my big winners. Mercedes in general. I know that sounds like I'm discounting Lando Norris. Huge win for him. Just incredible consistency. Even before all the safety cars, all the crashes, all the rain, when Piastri was following him really close on that first set of intermediates, I think Piastri was asking over the radio to be able to pass. And I'm sure there's some controversy there because they effectively told him to hold position for a little while. But then he slipped up, caught the curb, and dropped back 2.5 seconds.
Mm-hmm.
That's fine. That's not a huge mistake. Maybe he would have crawled the way back, but Norris didn't the whole race. I'm trying to find any point where Norris kind of put a step wrong, and he just had a strong race. But aside from, I think, Norris really stepping up and Verstappen doing Verstappen things, Mercedes, Williams, Sauber, really good stories for the day. A little bit of a rude awakening for rookies, aside from Kimi Antonelli.
Yeah, it definitely is. I mean, rain is the great equalizer, but it's also, it's going to show you who's experienced in the car and who's not.
Yeah.
No matter how good of a driver you are, as you saw with Fernando Alonso, no matter how good of a driver you are, you can still get caught out And if you're riding a wild Bronco that isn't tame yet, it's not going to go your way. Now, again,
and there's no way to practice that. They can't spray them with hoses while they're practicing.
That's right. Yeah,
right.
There's
and
no
you
tricks.
have to. You have to you have to drive those cars in the wet to have a grip on it. A feel for what the grip is. No pun intended there.
So trial by fire or trial by rain. Driving that V carb, not the same as driving the Red Bull. As you can see, I mean, even Helmut Marko at some point before the race, between qualies and race, said that at some point of the year, Max might be driving a V carb just because that car might be more competitive than the Red Bull. I think it was all said in jest. Obviously, as we saw from the results today, Max is with it. The Red Bull is going to be competitive. But yeah, it's not the same thing. It is another step of performance between the V carb and the Red Bull. So
well, and it just seemed like they all struggled right off the bat. I mentioned Alonso crashed out too. Sainz crashed out too. Maybe there was an issue with the car, but at least that gives you some hope that, it's not just the rookies falling off. But about halfway through the race, I thought, my goodness, we're not going to have a rookie left in this thing. They're all going to just slide into the grass and hit the edge, but that's good. Rookie surprise, a little bit of a rude awakening for Hamilton. To be honest. And it felt like not the rude awakening I thought. A lot of radio messages.
A lot of interesting radio messages. He remained very cordial throughout the race, but you could his voice was just dripping with frustration. Whether it was with the car, whether it was with, those radio messages, whether it was with the sound that radio makes.
Sorry, is that annoying? Is that irritating?
I tried not to break.
For somebody?
I couldn't take it.
Just leave me to it. Just leave me to it. I'm trying to record a podcast.
I'm trying to make a comment about the radio. Leave me to it, please. No, but you heard "leave me to it" several times. You even heard Leclerc saying "leave me to it."
That was last time.
I forget which one of the two said, "Hey, that's too much information."
It was Leclerc.
Yeah,
that's too much.
Yeah, and I think that everyone probably got some sort of working order to be like, "Hey, over communicate. The more information, the better. Don't leave things out. Whatever."
Right.
And you saw sort of both ends of the spectrum at this race, because on the one hand, you had Leclerc saying too much information, leave me to it. You had Hamilton saying thank you, leave me to it, and he was using words
really politely.
He was using words like please,
stop.
Yeah, like stop bothering me, please. And they were like, just try this one setting of the car, just add, I know they were even just like, I know it's frustrating, but just give it a shot. So his response was like, well, if I get into the situation where I need that or where that even applies, you betcha, I got it, but please leave me alone. Now,
I know where the button is. It's not that I don't know where it is, and it's not that I don't know what it does, but it's not time for that yet.
Yeah. So there was that end of the spectrum where
the K1 setting or whatever they kept asking him about. Yeah. I just kept thinking of K1 Speedway, the little indoor golf.
Well, it's tax season,
tracks,
so I keep thinking K1 is like, well, anyway. So there's the one end of the spectrum where they're just like, by the way,
there's a really cool button that'll go faster. You should push that.
And then on the other end, Leclerc calls in. He's like, "Hey, the car's full of water. What is that?" And then their response was literally like, "It's probably the water."
It's probably the water.
It's probably the water.
It's two things: either the rain has fallen in your car, which is unlikely,
you
peed yourself, or the water's leaking.
Yeah. So Leclerc was like, "Well, we'll add that to the words of wisdom." And I don't know, that sounded like an inside joke to me, but like, I truly enjoy. I mean, in addition to the race being like really fun to watch, the results being really, really good and climactic and everything, we also got some just gold radio chatter. And I'll never forget, car's full of water. What is it? Probably the water.
It could be. I don't want to jump to conclusions, but it could be the water.
Could be the water.
I mean, and that's fine. I will say though, you've got to be frustrated if I think they qualified 7th and 8th, which was already a little bit of an irritation. I think they thought they'd be higher than that. Hadjar out-qualified them, right? Am I saying that right? Oh, let me double check myself before I misquote myself here. No, sorry, Yuki Tsunoda. I knew one of the Racing Bulls had.
Yeah, and I mean they stood out, both of them. So
yeah,
man, who knows how this race would have gone if Hadjar had been with it the whole time,
right? Well, or Sainz. because you had a Williams and a Racing Bull out qualifying Ferrari. That's embarrassing enough. And then you go from 7th and 8th to finishing 8th and 10th. You can't be happy with that. And the Hamilton's message is he will not remain calm for too many more races if they keep passing him information. They literally, the K1 thing, and I think the commentators finally just said, I think that's some type of an overtake setting that gives you more battery deployment or whatever on these hybrid engines so that you can make that pass. But Hamilton at one point just said, like, I'm not close enough to push that button.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like the mushroom in Mario, it's not time to push it. I'm not going to, that's got to be really frustrating. We joked about, is Bono going to come join them now that Angela Cullen is trainer's back? Is he going to bring his old, what do they call them? Primary engineer or whatever they call those guys, the guys that chat with them on the race engineer.
Yeah.
Race engineer.
Yeah, race engineer.
Are they going to bring his old race engineer Bono over or not? I mean, a couple more races like this, and the answer is yes.
Yeah, the answer is there's a blank check in the mail. Please complete the number that you wish to receive. Just please be here tomorrow. It kind of goes to show, and like maybe a little education for everybody. Ferrari just never seems to be really with it when it comes to strategy. They've always more or less shot themselves in the foot. They'll have a great car. They've got two great drivers in their cars. It really, I mean, you cannot sleep on any one particular detail in Formula One. It is the pinnacle of motorsport. It is the most competitive league or series or whatever you want to say. It is the top level of things on four wheels that make noise and go fast. So if you
got to be on the top of your game.
If every single corner of your court is not covered, sorry, like somebody else is going to find your weakness and exploit it. And I mean, there's if you're Ferrari, there should be at least 15 people behind you, right? That are all gunning for it.
And that's really obvious for something like a pit stop, where you fight and fight and fight and fight to break that 1 second DRS line, and you get a second and a half out, and you do a bad pit stop and lose 3/4 of a second you didn't plan to lose, and that's enough to get you back in the DRS train.
Yeah.
It's really obvious with a pit stop. It's not as obvious, I think, with communication, but that makes a huge difference. He wasn't the only one who got communication. We talked about Leclerc, talked about Hamilton. Norris got a ton of information from his engineer, but he got a ton of information from the engineer when he was behind the safety car, cruising at what is Sunday afternoon speeds for an F1 car, and had time to process it, think through it, talk about the rain coming in. But in a race like this, you cannot have conversations with your drivers and discussions and recommend. You have to just tell them exactly what they need to do.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
When the rain's coming in, they can't see. They don't have a radar. They're not following along on their phone, right? That you have to tell them the rain is coming in a minute.
Right.
You have 1 minute to get around and come in here and pit for new tires. So
yeah, and you even heard the McLaren strategist going, "Hey, we think it's going to be lap 50, of 57. We think it's going to last this many minutes." And then, that, let's say that was lap 40, 38 to 40. By lap 44, 45, it was legitimately raining and everything was just kind of out the window. So it's not like you can be perfect. It's not like you can just predict the future necessarily.
Right.
But you can do way better, right? You can do way better than Ferrari did. You can do better with like, hey, these are the different scenarios. Let's make sure that whatever we choose to do doesn't stay on such a razor thin margin, or it can like cover a couple of these scenarios, right?
Yeah.
Armchair expert comment of the day, right there. Who knows what it's like, right?
I mean, yeah, and if you go back, sometimes if you haven't heard these types of messages, you go to YouTube and search, angriest radio messages or something like that. They're almost always things like an engineer piping up as a driver is trying to pass someone, and they pipe up with, push or don't, pit next lap.
Yeah.
And the driver's like, don't talk to me. Don't talk to me when I'm trying to pass somebody, when I'm in the braking zone or whatever it is. There's a time to talk and there's a time not to. I think you can't be too nice. And that's what I think a lot of Hamilton's going to need with his new engineers. You have to have that relationship where I'm going to snap at you. You're going to snap at me. We just have to get these messages through clearly. And I can't have a discussion with you. I can't be chatting about modes that I might want to try on the next time around.
Of course, the driver has to trust that if he's hearing something in his ear, that it's worth listening to. Right, because you can't just get, it's like a safety alert in your car or a pilot in an airplane. If he's hearing a beep and he ignores the beep, at some point that beep's going to be life or death, and he's gonna die, or whatever happens, right? So if you're ignoring your engineer on the radio, at one point it's going to be extremely important that you know exactly what he's saying. So you have to listen to every single message. You have to. It's any good driver would listen to every message. So.
And you can be mad about it later. There's been plenty of times where they called Hamilton in for fresh tires. He came in for fresh tires and whined about it. It was too early for fresh tires. I was doing fine. You can debate all that stuff later, but listen, you can be a normal driver on the road and someone's telling you where to exit and you're traveling 75 miles per hour. 70. Sorry, we always drive 70 if it says 70 mile per hour.
Yeah, what are you talking about?
Always driving down the road at the right speeds. And someone says, I think we exit here. It's like, I need to know right now. Do I exit here or not? Like, just make it clear because I can't look over at the phone.
Yeah.
It's worse. It's obviously a lot higher for them. It felt kind of awkward, I think, for Hamilton. Supposed to be the big Grand Prix. He's in a Ferrari. It's supposed to be great. He's struggling already a little bit, and then it rains. You don't want it to rain, even if you're an experienced driver. If you're in a new car, barely learned it in the dry. You don't want to test it in the wet yet. And then it felt awkward with those communications. So kind of a rude awakening, I think, for him. Not to mention just a clean and a little bit embarrassing pass by Leclerc in lap 53. I don't know if you saw that, but he just passed him. He just cut over in front of him, blocked him. And I thought, yeah, that is your teammate passing you at the end of the race with, on merit. So
on merit, the only person you absolutely have to beat is your teammate. Right. It shows everybody else that all things equal, you're better, right? Wow. Regardless of what happens on the grid.
Mr. Ferrari just passed him though.
Yeah.
Didn't he call? I think he called Charles Leclerc Mr. Ferrari this week.
I mean,
Charles, we all know.
Charles made it clear that he was going for a world championship this year at the 75th anniversary event, the reveal party in London. First thing that came out of his mouth on the mic in front of however many thousands of people.
Yeah. I'm going to be a champion.
Yeah.
Yeah, but you sent me that meme with a guy, like, get all the drivers to say they're going to be a world champion.
Yeah.
Like, world champion. Like, what's the likelihood that that's going to happen? Next to zero.
Next to zero. Yeah.
But they got to say it. I think we can all agree he's Mr. Ferrari.
Oh,
I think
for
Leclerc
sure.
was Mr. Ferrari the day he signed for Ferrari.
I mean, this is not the first world champion he's had in the car next to him. And he's outlived the first one, at least. So,
yeah.
Well,
a bunch of winners there. Miscommunications, some losers. I think we already covered the Spaniards in general. I think we lost both of the Spaniards to crash outs.
Hey, speaking of Spaniards.
Yeah. Oh, Daniel showing me his socks for those of you who are not lucky enough to be watching the video feed.
Hey, for those of you not watching, why aren't you watching? Get on YouTube.
Describe those for us, Daniel. What socks do you have for those?
These are the kind of socks you buy as a tourist when you're abroad. Yeah. They're low quality.
Like a nice straw hat.
Exactly. You might get one or two wears out of them. But these are super cool. They've got the Spanish flag around the top.
Sure.
And then they have embroidered images of jamon.
Yeah.
Yeah,
those are beautiful. I also am wearing nice socks. I'm not going to show them to you though.
Well, unless you put them on this morning in direct support of Fernando Alonso, Carlos Sainz, we don't really need to see them.
Yeah, and I didn't, to be honest. Not unless they're Gryffindors.
Okay.
Listen, big Harry Potter fan here. Might as well come on out with it. Other losers besides Spaniards and rookies. I feel like it's all rookies except Kimi. Technically, Bortoleto did all right, but he had a spin out there. I think he would have been threatening had that not happened, but at least getting into the points. Piastri took a lot of energy out of Abbott, out of old Albert Park there.
Yeah.
And Lawson. We got to talk about Lawson.
For all intents and purposes, he's a rookie. He's a young driver who's had one season in an actual F1 car. He's now like you said, he's now on a different team, different car entirely. Yeah. Uh-huh. So not forgiving, and not just less forgiving. This car is not forgiving. You saw a veteran, a podium, a race winner, podium stander. Whatever you call them when they're second and third place. But you saw a veteran podium,
the best of the losers.
Yeah, whatever. You put him in a Red Bull, he's not necessarily going to perform just like Max. So
yeah, that's fair.
It's difficult now. What we will have to see is if in dry conditions within a couple of races, several more rounds of free practice and qualifying under his belt, will he be able to squeeze anything else out of that car?
Yeah. I mean, I'll give him this. Liam Lawson is a good driver. We know that. We've seen him drive. He's not a bad driver. He may not be a great one, but he's a pretty good driver, at least what we've seen him race in the past. It does make it very clear to me that Verstappen is something special. And I know, like, everybody said this over the last number of years, but that's just such a massive gap. I just noticed, so I want to go back a little bit to qualifying. If you didn't watch qualifying, or for those of you who did, practice and qualifying really leading up to the races, Lawson struggled in general.
Yeah.
He struggled in P1 and P2. I think Hadjar, Doohan, Kimi, Bortoleto, I think all of them were above him in P2. He was struggling in general, and then in qualifying, he just completely failed. And if you look especially at Tsunoda and Hadjar, both driving the Red Bull sister car, Racing Bulls, or Barb,
if you will.
Yeah, the Racing Bulls. Both of them outperforming
The Racing Barbs.
The Racing Barbs.
If we don't say something else, it's going to be balls from now on. The Racing Balls.
The Racing Balls. Well, and we talked a lot about this, and there was much said about this over the offseason when Tsunoda failed to get that second Red Bull seat. Everybody knew Tsunoda wanted the second Red Bull seat. Everybody knows that if you're in the Racing Bulls or the AlphaTauri or I've lost track, Daniel. There have been a lot of different names. V-Carb car. If you're in that second Red Bull car, you want the Red Bull seat. Tsunoda's been getting better and better and better. I thought it was a shame he didn't get that Red Bull seat. And then now, seeing how badly that Red Bull performs, I kind of feel like it was kind to leave Yuki in the Racing Bull car. He's likely to have better performance out of that than the Red Bull.
Yeah, sure. I mean, I think as humans, we all want to sort of choose our own destiny, right? And who knows? Yuki's got way more laps and reps under his belt. So,
yeah, I don't know. I would have liked to have seen him in the Red Bull, and then now I'm happy he's not. I'm happy to watch him and Hadjar succeed, and I'm hoping Liam can get to grips with that. But right now, not a great look for Liam Lawson. Did you hear all the noise about Jack Doohan, and about how his seat, he only has, his contract is only good for, it's all speculation, Daniel. It's all speculation, but Jack Doohan's contract only covers the first 6 races.
I had a comment teed up about Jack Doohan the other day on one of our previous recordings, because he just had this really great comeback to a reporter who was like, hey, what's it like with Colapinto, chomping at your heels or whatever? And he's like, all the drivers are good. I earned this seat. I'm going to misquote it because I kind of forget what like the hard punching piece of it was. But he was just like, hey, I earned this seat, and if he can earn it, good for him, kind of thing,
I mean, that's a great reply. I actually like Jack Doohan a lot. It seemed like he had a great attitude about things. I thought he actually performed really well up until he crashed out. But I also thought, all right, it's all speculation that he only gets 6 races. Aren't all these contracts kind of speculation? Every time someone says, well, they signed him up for 4 years, unless they don't perform that well, then he can bail out.
If real details emerge from anyone's contract and it doesn't come straight out of their own mouth, I would say that, that's actually a pretty big deal, right? So yeah, I think it's all speculation. I think you can sort of infer or reverse engineer based on certain details, like what it actually is. But we won't know until something happens. Even if after it happens, we might be forced to be like, well, yeah, it could have been that he had 6 races guaranteed or whatever.
Right.
I don't know. I think any team at any point can drop the money, buy somebody out of their contract, put a better driver in. At the end of the day, it's a calculation on where you can end the season and what kind of prize money you can get.
Yeah. Well, Valtteri Bottas is a backup driver for Mercedes. So we're happy. I think Antonelli proved that he's doing very well. But if he doesn't, we'd all love to see what's next for Valtteri Bottas. Yep. Reserve driver for Alpine, Franco Colapinto. Colapinto jumped in last season for a few races and did fairly well. He did all right. He did well enough that I think it does add a little bit of something to be nervous. Put it this way. The Ferrari reserve driver is Zhou Guanyu. So I don't think either of I don't think either Charles Leclerc or Lewis Hamilton are remotely nervous that short of major surgery, they will put Zhou Guan Yu in for them. If you're Jack Doohan, you know, having Colapinto back there is a little bit worse.
I mean, based on Carlos Sainz ill-fated situation last year, I hope they each suffer the need for an appendectomy. Because
Wow.
I mean, well, I mean, they might even
Yeah.
wishing it for themselves. The results, if they're superstitious at all, even
that's
if
true.
they're a little stitious,
Mhm.
all these drivers are like, man, if only I could get appendicitis.
If only I could lose that extra weight of my appendix. Yeah, Sainz gets that appendix surgery last year, comes back and wins. I think it was the Australian Grand Prix, wasn't it? That he came back for. Yeah, and won.
Was it?
Was it? I'm going to double check that.
Yeah.
I'm 99% sure it was the Australian Grand Prix that he came back and won. In a Ferrari, which is, he's told he's going to lose his seat to Lewis Hamilton. Then he goes through, not an insignificant surgery, comes back in pain and wins the race. That's it doesn't get much more impressive than that. Well, emotional roller coaster. Normally the wet is pretty fun. I will say the first 2-3 laps of this race, it did knock out a lot of the really fun season stories. So I'm excited to see those continue next week in China. Hadjar honestly became one of my sleeper favorites. I think at the moment, Isaac Hadjar is my favorite rookie. Maybe we should just have a running favorite rookie count throughout the season.
Yeah.
I'm going to go ahead and throw Hadjar on my favorite rookies list.
Yeah, we'll have a leaderboard. We'll have a point system.
Yeah. Okay. Did you have a favorite rookie of the day? Crashes aside.
I got to stick with Doohan, man. I've liked him since I was excited when he got the seat, to be honest. And I've seen some good off track commentary from him. He's handling the Colapinto situation extremely well. I hate that he, didn't finish the race this week, but
sure.
Yeah, I still like him.
But that's no reason. Hadjar didn't even start the race this week. So
he didn't even start. And I like Hadjar. So
if you can't be blamed for putting Doohan on your list, I can't be blamed for putting Hadjar, right?
Yeah.
Or vice versa. So good themes. I did knock him out right off the bat, Doohan, and then Sainz, and then with Piastri falling out, it did feel like a lot of that energy going into the race dropped away, but there was still a lot of other excitement there, especially with all the rain around lap 44, 45. Cooldown Room was fun. Cooldown Room has become my favorite thing to watch. It did feel a little bit like two good friends who had just battled a really good hard race. And then also George Russell was there. I mean, he just kept trying to pipe up every now and then. Like Norris and Verstappen would be like, oh yeah, right here's where I turn. And Russell would be like, oh yeah, that was a really tough turn too.
So
hush, George,
if you just watch the postseason interviews with the 3 podium standers, I can't figure out what to call somebody that's on the podium. Anyway,
yeah,
during
podium rider,
yeah,
we'll try
podium riser.
Mm-hmm.
During Max's interview, Lando just kind of walks casually behind the camera, and he's just like, whatever. I don't even think he looks. But then during Lando's interview, Russell, who'd already been interviewed, right? Because they went 3, 2, 1. He walks in front of the camera behind Lando, and he does this weird, awkward, hop run, oh, excuse me. So yeah, Russell, bless his heart, he's a little awkward.
He's a little bit awkward. And to be fair, he's kind of the little brother out of the 3 in this race. In the sense that he wasn't there. He wasn't up there at the front. He didn't really know what it was like. He had a good race, but I don't remember seeing Russell drive in this race.
Yeah, I feel like he didn't really have any moments, right?
No, which is good. I think he crashed out last year. So, anyway, and then we didn't talk about it a whole lot. Qualifying was fantastic. Just watching through qualifying, the gap times were nothing.
Yeah,
everything was super tight. I had a note as I was watching it that it was almost too close.
Yeah, Q1 ended with 2.9 between all of them. What was I didn't write anything down, but that was I remember seeing that and just being like, huh.
It was close. I'll check the numbers here really quickly. It was close enough that I just thought, man, this almost just seems like you're gonna end up with a gust of wind causing Isaac Hadjar to be in second,
yeah,
and Lewis Hamilton to be 9th, because it's literally that close. First place, Lando Norris, he clocked in a 115.096. And 10th was Carlos Sainz at 116.062. So what is that?
1.5.
Less than a second.
Oh, less than a
Less than a-
second. I must have not heard you
Less
right.
than a second. Less than a second between them. Really close. And they even the commentators made a comment about how different it can be going in. They were already talking about how the race was projected to be wet. And they were saying, that makes a massive difference when you have cars that are performing that well,
yeah.
where you even have rookies that are able to manage them that well. It really does come down to when you switch from one tire to another, right? Like split seconds can make a huge difference when you're that close. When you have a second or two between first and second place, you have a little bit more flex. You don't notice a lot of those mistakes, but that really comes out to play when you're that close together. Anything can flip it.
Yeah, and just for you guys listening, like we're talking about Q1 where there's 20 cars out there competing for pole position. And from those 20 cars at whatever, 2.5 seconds down to Q3, which is only 10 cars competing for pole position. I mean, that's wild consistency in the competition and the level of performance that those cars now have this many years into these regulations.
Right. Yeah. And it's a massive change year over year. So I had to kind of go back again as the somewhat of a bandwagon here, newcomer fan here. I had to go back a little bit to research previous gap times and so forth to get an idea of what's normal. Did not realize how tight this has really gotten. And what I like about that is that it really speaks to the fact that the hype is not just hype. They've been talking for a long time, really since last year, about how last year was the closest Formula One season ever. And this year was projected to be even closer. We've been talking about it. It's exciting to see that actually come to fruition.
Yeah. I'd like to see a job for AI, maybe. I'd like to see the number of times the commentators say wake turbulence. Previous regs
Wake
versus
turbulence,
this
Okay.
set of regs, because this specific set of regs, they kind of eliminated the ability to have those really sharp edges on all the aero bits of the car.
Trying to clean up all that dirty air coming off the back of the car.
the wingtip vortices that come off of a car. Any surface that's creating lift creates a vortex.
Here's just full of really fancy words today. I'm impressed. Wingtip vortices.
In the laminar
vortices.
flow. I'm kidding.
Yeah.
So these regs were specifically designed to keep that wake turbulence at a minimum.
Right.
And I think the complaints at the time, whichever, there's always gonna be complaints, but I think before they went into effect, everyone was like, you're hurting the performance. This is a performance driven sport. Like, leave the performance alone.
Right.
But truly, it has made for better spectacle.
Yeah. It allowing the cars to get closer, because there's an argument about that for a DRS, right? Oh, you're closer, so I'm going to give you a boost so you can catch up. It does make it a lot more fun for the viewer.
Oh, yeah.
Not just watching a car disappear into the distance. And frankly, more impressive when a car like the McLaren can slowly walk away from the Red Bull behind it without DRS. That's really cool to see.
Yeah.
So really good race. I couldn't be more excited about it. I will say there's one thing we need to solve. And Daniel, we talked about this a little bit. We were looking at a lot of the track orientations, a lot of the track layouts, and debating whether there were better names for some of these tracks, because no offense, but the Australian Grand Prix at Albert Park is just, it's not what I come to expect from the exciting venues that we get to see race.
It's almost worse than Visa Cash App Racing Balls.
I think it is worse. I think it is worse than Visa Cash App Racing Balls, or Barb. We need better names for these tracks. And a lot of this came from, we were looking at the Las Vegas Grand Prix, and all of you listeners out there, all of you watchers out there who love Formula One, you know that the Las Vegas Grand Prix track, it looks like, let's all say it together, it looks like a pig, right? A pig laying on its back. That's what it looks like. And people have sectioned it off. Like, this is where you get the bacon. This is where you get chops and whatnot. And so we were looking at some of these tracks and trying to figure out, is there a better name? And Daniel, I have a couple of things I want to run by you today as we come up with a better name for Albert Park. Are you ready?
Let's hear him.
Okay. First of all, I'm going to share with you, I think a great presentation. So let me share this with you here, and you tell me what you think. This is the Critical Laps 2025 Better Track Names for the Australian Grand Prix at Albert Park.
And for those of you not watching on YouTube, this is the hard-hitting research and statistical product delivered to you by the Critical Lap.
By the Critical Lap.
Yeah.
This is the type of hard-hitting journalism, frankly, and creative content that you come to expect from the best podcast in the Formula One space, the Critical Lap.
Yeah.
And so with that, I present you with better track names based on track shape. That's why we have the visual. For those of you who are just listening online, bear with us, but go ahead at some point and pull up the image for the Australian Grand Prix track. And the first one, I just want to call out, this was named the Albert Park Grand Prix Circuit after Prince Albert, the Queen's consort, Queen Victoria's consort, but that's 150 years ago, and it's just the park name. So looking at the shape of this track, it's not a pig. The first one that we have is option number 1, and I do think these are ordered in the best row, the driver's seat. Because if you look at it, it has the look of a driver's seat, the driver position that these Formula One drivers sit in. And I think it's a perfect name, at least this season, for kicking off the season with the driver's seat. I also had another one.
Yeah, let's see the other options.
Can the real sim drivers please line up, because it also looks like a simulation chair. Option number 2, the car seat, Grand Prix circuit, because if you tip it at about a 90-degree angle counterclockwise, it looks like a child's car seat. Yeah. So that's number 2, and not the best. And now number 3 is a little bit of a stretch. All right, and this is really gonna this is only for the American fans, and it may frustrate some portion of American fans. And that's what I like to call the Fat Florida Grand Prix circuit. The Fat Florida Grand Prix circuit effectively says that if you take the shape of the Florida, and you take that shape of the outline of Florida that we've all come to know and love, and you add like several million burgers to that shape, or maybe pizza or some other American diet, what you end up with is somewhat of a Fat Florida. If you flip the circuit upside down, it's sort of a chubby Florida.
100%.
Now, listen, I tried to get AI to help me with this. You'd be surprised how hard it is to get AI to make you a Fat Florida in ways that are appropriate to show to a broad audience. So those are the 3 options for you based on shape alone. I'm not sure that we should name it based off of shape alone. I have another option for you, Daniel, just based off of good names for the circuit itself, going off of that Australian feel. One is, if we're going to call it Albert Park, let's go with that Australian pronunciation, which is frankly Abbott Pack. And call it the Abbott Pack circuit. But the other was just the Bloody Ripper racetrack, because I don't know if you know Australia, if you're up to speed on your Australian slang.
Bloody Ripper.
Yeah, it's just a really good thing. And the Bloody Ripper.
It's a Bloody Ripper.
It's a Bloody Ripper. Yeah.
I like Bloody Ripper, and I like Fat Albert. Honestly, we could take Fat Florida and combine it with Albert, and
Oh. Okay, I've done my Australian, you've done your Fat Albert. Okay, well, you know what? We should leave this up to the fans. So if you're a fan of ours, if you're listening to the Critical Lap, send us a note, send us a comment, throw it on the YouTube chat, post a comment, or email us at info@criticallap.com with your vote for what we should name, what we should rename colloquial as a nickname for the Australian Grand Prix at Albert Park. Think Monza, the Temple of Speed. I think we'll change Temple of Speed. We might come up with a different shape name, but it's already got a nice
legendary
nickname.
We shouldn't mess with that.
We need a better name for this one. I got to be honest, I'm kind of leaning toward Bloody Ripper, just because it's fun to say with an Australian accent. G'day, mate. All right. Well, on
Rise
that
up
note,
lights.
Rise up lights. All right. Any other notes on the Australian Grand Prix before we shift over and start talking about what to expect for China next week?
I think that's it for me.
All right. Well, let's talk China. So next up, Grand Prix next week. It will be on March the 23rd, which, by the way, is one of the drivers' birthday. And there's a clue for you in there. March 23rd. Can you guess whose birthday that is?
Currently on the grid?
Currently on the grid. March 23.
Who's number 23?
Alex Albon.
Yeah, there you go.
Happy birthday, Alex
I was
Albon,
thinking
in advance.
323. I was like, what was Danny Rick's number before he switched it to Dale Earnhardt's number?
Yeah. No, it's Alex Albon's birthday coming up. So on Alex Albon's birthday, we will have the Chinese Grand Prix. So what to expect there? I'm trying to look at the notes from last year. We had a pretty tight race last year. Norris looked pretty close last year. That was one of the first races. It was right before Miami where Norris was starting to close the gap. He was still 13 seconds behind in second place, but starting to look pretty close.
No, but that's when my hope was kind of cemented for a win from Norris, for sure.
Yeah. Starting to look competitive, because I think the first couple races, it looked like it was just going to be the Max Verstappen show all over again. And that was the one that really shifted it. So looked close last year. Do you know what, Daniel? What we had that came into play last year a lot was the concertina effect. It was massively at play in China last year.
That concertina effect reared its ugly head.
It reared its ugly head in the form of a rear ending of Daniel Ricciardo.
Yeah.
But honestly, who could have seen it? Who could have seen it coming? Frankly, it takes something as massive as the concertina effect to cause a driver like Lance Stroll to crash into somebody.
Yeah, and at this point, what do we like more, the concertina effect?
Yeah.
To kind of manipulate the results of a Grand Prix, or rain, or any other weather event, wind.
That's right.
Heat.
There's got to be a cooler. Is it? I guess there's precipitation. Is there a cool concertina name for rain? Because concertina effect we already covered is just accordioning. Or when it comes to car driving, the guy in front of you brakes a little faster than you, and on down the line. There's got to be a cool effect name for rain. Magnussen and Stroll had a really nice, actually last place fight. There was a really nice tight race between them, going back and forth. And then I don't know if you remember this. That was the race where Alonso caught the gravel on the last turn. And I'm trying to remember who crashed really bad. They caught the gravel and just lost it and hit the wall. And then Alonso caught that gravel and did a huge snap and somehow pulled it out. It was a good race. Should be a fun one.
Yeah, and I the crowd's always really good in China. There's plenty of fans there. I like to see more in Asia, to be honest with you. Korea's got a bid in for a race. They've had a purpose-built track before. They were on the calendar for a while, but I think it's been a little over 10 years since they hosted a race. So
South Korea?
South Korea specifically.
Yeah. I think we'd all love to see a North Korean race, but we're going to hold out for now. Yeah. You mentioned that to me. I had not seen that South Korea had made a bid for it. I know didn't the Netherlands recently say that they were bailing out after this year?
Yeah, I think Zandvoort's not on the calendar going forward.
Okay. So maybe picking up South Korea instead. Well, the race, U.S. Central Time or Eastern Time will be 1 p. No, sorry. It'll be 2 a.m. in the morning on March 23rd. So for those of us in Eastern, Central, Western Mountain Times in the U.S., maybe wake up, make yourself some coffee, and watch that replay.
Yeah.
Unless you're into getting up at 2 a.m.
Or staying up till 2 a.m.
Yeah.
2 a.m.
If you're starting to prep yourself for that Las Vegas Grand Prix.
Yeah, exactly.
2 a.m. race time, and obviously practicing. And there's a sprint race it'll technically be March 21st. So on that Friday at 10, now I guess that'd be 10 p.m. 10 p.m. there'll be a sprint race. So it's a sprint race weekend.
So that'll be a fun little Friday evening thing.
Yeah. I think Zhou Guan Yu did fairly well in the sprint race last year. And that was fairly big news, obviously, as his home race. So the circuit itself is pretty fun. I was actually looking back at it, maybe so that we can come up with a good name for the circuit. But looking at that first, at turn 1, 2, 3, 4, it's one giant curve that it rotates back on itself almost 360 degrees in right-hand turns and then back again. It's almost nauseating to watch.
It's like a hairpin with a hard right at the end. It's like a right hairpin, and then and then it unwinds itself. Yeah.
it's the kind of turn that in a normal car makes all the items in your cup holders and things just roll out.
Yeah. Especially
So,
the way we drive.
yeah. 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 It should be a good race. Really looking forward to that. Hey, listen, I couldn't be in a better mood coming off a great race. A lot of good stuff to look forward to. Daniel, let's do some quick reactions. You got any quick reactions for me today?
Yeah, let's see here. I don't even know how to put this, but Ruben, would you have remembered what to do in a race start abort situation, given the new rules? Race number 1 of the season,
Mhm.
formation lap incident.
Yeah.
Remember last year, whatever race that was, everyone got penalized because they, some people lined up wrong, some people stayed, some people moved, some people didn't move. So, how would you have handled this pop quiz on the new regs for an aborted race start?
Let me stop you right there. I don't remember any of the regulations on the restart. When they were going around, I was like, wait a second, there's different rules here about what they're supposed to do. But at that point, everybody was sliding off and it felt like a joke.
Yeah.
And I thought, I don't even know if we're going to get this race started. Like somebody's poured oil on the track. What were there some that were at play that I forgot about?
Some regs?
Yeah.
Well, so
like new regs?
last year there was that weird formation lap incident, and people got confused what box to be in, right? And
it's Brazil, right?
That sounds right. Yeah.
Stroll beached himself in the gravel and all that.
Yeah, but I mean, one thing was a lineup problem where people got in the wrong box. Another thing was the lights did something, and some people were triggered by the lights to move or to like do another lap. So like,
oh, that's right.
a good chunk of the grid like left the grid while a good chunk just like stayed in their spot.
Right.
So there were all these, penalties kind of thrown around. So if you would just line those cars back up, and the track was clear, and let's say you did another formation lap to get them, whatever for whatever reason they do that.
Yeah,
I feel like had it been me, I would not have expected that race number 1, and then I would have been like, "What are even the rules? We didn't really know them last year. They've changed."
No, I wouldn't have any idea. This reminds me of every now and then you'll see special plays like that where it'll be like 1,000 IQ plays or whatever by baseball players. Because baseball seems like a sport that has lots of random little nitpicky rules you forgot about where you have to run around the bases even though you didn't get a hit, but you have to do it or otherwise it didn't count. Things like that. And it's those types of rules where there's one guy there who actually read the instruction manual when he was 7 and never forgot it.
Yeah.
But everybody else was like, I don't know, I've just been playing baseball, man. I don't know how these guys remember that stuff as it is. Their reaction times have to be so fast, even already on things like yellow flags and things like that. Like how fast they let off the gas, and they're tracking that so closely now that I don't know if you saw in this race, there was a moment when one of the restarts, I think it was the second one of the rolling restarts, Norris was in the lead, Verstappen was right behind him, and it looked like Norris went a little bit, and then he sort of slowed down a little bit, and even the announcers kind of said, and looks like he's gonna wait a bit, and then he took off, and I had the same question. I was like, are they allowed to like, sort of pretend to go? Like what qualifies as a go?
Well, I don't know if anything came of it, but I think it was the second restart. There were all of these potential infringements. So like 4 or 5 drivers came up for review on that restart, and they kind of like, as the officials were like reviewing footage or like, I don't know, taking complaints from other teams or whatever, like it would pop up on the screen like, hey, this is under review, this is under investigation, or this is I think they say it's noted, and then they say it's under investigation, and then they kind of give their resolution. But yeah, it was a very busy race for all that, between the unsafe releases, like what happened to Antonelli there towards the end that got, overturned. What happened on the formation lap, what happened under safety car, a lot of different stuff.
Yeah, well, you're going to have to remind me of some of those rules. The only one that came to my mind was the extra point for fastest lap when Norris clocked that in at the end. And I thought, oh, well, he's already started off with 26 points, just 25. There's no extra point this year. That's the only one that kind of came to mind. But you've given me some homework. I'm going to go read up on that. All right, I got a quick reaction for you.
Yeah, let's go.
It takes a little bit of background. Did you see like last week that Helmut Marko, everybody's favorite nightmare image, had an interview where he described like Bortoleto as like a B driver.
Yeah.
And Bortoleto had a really good reaction to it where he just kind of said, I'm going to prove him wrong. And, we're all out here. We've all earned our spot kind of thing. My question for you is, if the FIA cannot be criticized and the sport cannot be criticized by the drivers, so you can't come off of a race and criticize the FIA and say, oh, you guys did that wrong. Should they limit the comments and criticism of F1 coaches and leads and team leads and things like that, given that they have potentially negative effects on a driver's career opportunities?
I think number one, is Helmut Marko actually attached to Red Bull in any way? Or is he just that old guy that they just keep around?
I mean, that's a great question.
Can he
too.
be sanctioned as, whether he's an owner in the team or consultant, I don't know. Is he even touchable, right, at this point? Number two, there's no such thing as bad publicity. So if I'm Helmut Marko, I have a kind of an unwritten, unofficial rule to any talent manager, talent agent in the biz. Hey, hit me up for a cool $5-10 grand. I don't know. I'll throw some smoke. I'll talk
right.
well or
because
poorly
listen,
about
apparently.
Anybody you want, because I can make a headline, guys. Like, let me, whatever you want. I can for $5 grand, I'll say something bad about him. For 10 grand, I'll say something good about him. But no matter what, it's going to raise these drivers' profiles, right? It's going to give any success Bortoleto has for the rest of the year. They're going to have a little bit more to say about it, because they're going to be like, and then Helmut Marko called him a beta,
Right. Well, but I guess that's my point, right? Helmut Marko is involved in some way in Red Bull. Nobody's really entirely clear, but Helmut Marko is
a
important.
doctor, by the way, of something.
Like a real doctor, or
when he's on the screen, it's Dr. Helmut Marko. So, maybe, and the reason I bring that up is like, is he the villain of Red Bull? Is he their in-house villain?
Dr. Helmut Marko seems like what I would name our best like signing Sharpie if I was a Mercedes PR guy. like when you're signing hats for people, like, here, use Dr. Helmut Marko. Yeah. That guy, first of all, if he was ever played in a movie, he'd be played by Werner Herzog. Yep. I can never pronounce that guy's name. They have the same. That guy just comes across as scary and intense. What I'm confused about, though, is Bortoleto won the championship last year, right? The Formula 2 championship. The guy is a highly skilled driver.
Yeah.
If Helmut Marko has any sway at all, maybe he doesn't. Maybe that's the thing, is he doesn't actually have a lot of sway over anybody but Red Bull. But if he's throwing his weight around and other teams are hearing him say that, or 2 out of 10 teams are hearing him say that, right? Red Bull and Racing Bulls, does that damage Bortoleto's chance of ever getting out of Sauber? Because he's now throwing shade at a driver that, like, where are you getting this opinion from? Like, it's just because you picked up a different driver than Bortoleto. That I think if the FIA can say you can't criticize us in the public, you can't do those things, there should be some basic regulations saying you can't damage a driver's chances because you have a bad opinion about them.
Well, like I said, I don't think there's any such thing as bad publicity. And at this point, Helmut Marko isn't going to be necessarily taken seriously every time. And, if you say that Bortoleto, the winner of F2 last year, the champion of F2, is, a B grade or, beta or, second rate driver, you basically are also saying that there are no good young drivers coming up, right? You're saying that the entire class of drivers at F2 don't cut the mustard in F1, don't belong. And that's in and of itself. That's just kind of an irrational statement.
That's fair. And so maybe I shouldn't give that any credit. I think Hadjar came in second anyway.
Yeah.
and Hadjar was picked up by the Racing Bulls.
Yeah.
So maybe that's your way of boosting your
Yeah.
driver Hadjar's. It doesn't seem like Hadjar needs any boost, but
And
he's
look,
got a lot
no,
of
I
confidence.
don't know what gets Helmut Marko his place at Red Bull. I mean, he's apparently a figure of some kind, and we should probably
Sure.
do some research here. I bet, whenever our deep dive on Red Bull as a team comes out, episode whatever that might be, we'll probably have a lot more to say
Sure.
about Helmut Marko's origins. But today, whatever he's doing there, I think there's probably a little bit of like ulterior motive to what
Sure.
he's saying.
Listen, my point, I guess, is just if Niki Lauda had come out working with Mercedes and said, that some driver was B level, we all would have sat up and taken notice.
That's
but
true.
Helmut Marko is no Niki Lauda.
Yeah.
So
yeah,
that's fair enough. All right. What else you got? Any more?
Yeah. So, shoot, I didn't write this one down. I had it ready for you, and I totally lost it. Oh, here it is. New graphics in the Formula One broadcast. Take them or leave them. Do you like them? Are they better than last year? Are they?
Can't say I noticed. I will say the leaderboard was really frustrating this race. I think we both pointed this out. At one point, they didn't show intervals for like 10 or 15 laps. And they kept saying, boy, he's really putting distance between him now. And it's like, I really wish I could see that.
I kept rewinding because suddenly Max was like 15 or 16 seconds behind Piastri. And I was like, did Max, go in deep on a turn? Did he spin? I was like, did he change tires? I mean, that's not enough time for a pit stop. But I was curious because like I didn't see the times for a while. They come back up and he's 15 seconds behind, and I'm like, okay, I'm curious. I will say though, overall, I do kind of like the refresh, right? I like the refresh.
Yeah.
The colors are a little nicer. The graphics are a little bit more dynamic. I don't know if you noticed this, but there's even like a message board next to the lights on the straight where they're starting, with just little like tidbits, right? Which I think would be an interesting way to be like, hey guys, there was an aborted start, or we're redoing the formation lap or whatever. Don't forget, this is what
just like those traffic signs when there's an accident and they like tell you the delay to exit 55 or whatever.
Or when there is no accident, they're like, what do we do? It's 5 to 8 minutes to the next exit, or whatever, like major intersection. Right. Exactly. So I don't know if they'll have. I assume they'll have this at every track, but I think it's a nice little refresh, little upgrade for. In addition to seeing Louis Vuitton everywhere and Tag Heuer as the new timepiece, official sponsor, partner, whatever. It's kind of a nice little update. I like it.
Yeah. I can't say I noticed a whole lot, but that's good. I got another one for you, and this one I'll turn it differently because I was going to ask you, is the Williams hype train still real? But we already asked that question, I think. So I'm going to ask you a different one.
I think that question's already been answered.
I think it's been answered, and I'm excited about that answer. No, let me ask you a different one. Who wins in the constructors' battle, Williams or Barb? Racing Bulls, Racing Balls, V-Carb. Who wins, the Racing Bulls or Williams in the constructors' battle?
So quick reaction, I think Williams finishes ahead of Barb. Okay. I think that Barb's early success right now can't really be taken too literally. I mean, I'm sure seriously they are a contender, right? But they didn't really finish the race at the same level that they qualified. So are they just a good qualifying car now that they've had some upgrades from last year? I don't know. I mean, I don't want to discount Tsunoda as a driver. I really am excited for Hadjar to be a good year one rookie. But as of yet, I don't know. Like, I need some consistency to that performance to say, oh, V-Carb's with it now. And they can compete with a team like Williams, who has just been, steady Eddie, improving, increasing their position on the grid, improving their performance, kind of playing the long game. It seems like that it's a team that's really playing the long game and playing it well. And that's what I have hope for. So it's also a bit of a biased opinion, I'll admit.
No, I mean, it's too close to call for me, but I think I lean your way. I'm rapidly becoming a Williams fanboy. People keep asking me, what's your favorite team? And I say, I have the luxury of having come to Formula One relatively recently where I can kind of like them all right now. Nobody's really frustrated me. I'm not too stuck. I'm excited because it feels like I thought that was Carlos Sainz's only place to go. but now the more I see their performance, the more I think James Vowles had a good sales pitch.
Yeah.
And I think Carlos Sainz saw something he liked. Yes, maybe it was one of the few ports in a storm, but when he lost that seat at Ferrari, I was really disappointed when he was going to Williams. And now I'm really hoping Williams comes out in 2026 really strong. And this year they're fighting. I would love to see them fight for fourth or third place this year, which is insane. But well, I guess we won't know because I thought Hadjar was stronger than Tsunoda and Hadjar crashed out. I thought Sainz was stronger than Albon and Sainz crashed out. So it'll be really curious to see if we get a dry race next week and we have all 4 drivers from both teams performing.
Yeah, I'm excited to see what Sainz can do when he gets this car under him, whenever he figures it out. Because Albon's had a couple years with this thing. And granted, the performance is increasing, but just, new car, new problems. So if Sainz can adapt and when he adapts, I really am excited to see how he stacks up to Albon. And if Albon can come in on merit in 5th, what does that even mean?
Right. Yeah. We've said it 1,000 times. Everybody else has too, but I think we finally have some proof for it. It's lining up to be a really good season.
Yeah.
So thanks for joining us for this recap. It's exciting to get into the season. Again, next race up will be the Chinese Grand Prix. That will be next weekend. They'll be racing on Alex Albon's birthday. So happy early birthday to Alex Albon. Thanks for joining us on the Critical Lap. Please make sure to subscribe, to like, to leave a comment, to send us an email at info@criticallap.com. And thanks again to our engineer on the pit wall, the legendary, the infamous Chris P.
Thanks, Chris. Thank you, everybody. See you next time.
See you next time.